Hey guys, and welcome back to another super fun, super cool tutorial. This tutorial is for the SHAG mullet haircut. I'm so proud of this one. I hope you love it as much as I do. I put a lot of time and effort into this, and I really hope that you will take away a lot from it, whether you're a professional stylist or you're trying to do this at home, although I do not recommend that you do this at home. I wanted to show you the steps. Grab a snack, grab a coffee, and let's get started. Okay, so my model Jane came in with a ton of hair. Look at that. She had so much hair. I thought that she had like a short bob haircut and I was just going to shape it into a mullet. But when she walked in, I was like, honestly, this is perfect because look at all of that cutting that I'm going to be able to do and shaping. It's really nice when someone has really thick, dense hair. The first thing I did was put in some Smooth Again lotion from Kevin Murphy because it helps me cut. I decided that I was going to razor her hair because I just felt like it was healthy enough to do that. I also washed her hair beforehand with the Maxi Wash from Kevin Murphy just to remove any buildup. Now I'm parting her hair in the middle just to find her parting and see like kind of how I was going to section this haircut. The first sections that I took away were the ones in the front of the face. She had already cut her own bangs at home, which look amazing. This is me trying to kind of figure out where those front layers are going to sit, because with the shag mullet look, you really want to shape those layers around the face. Now I'm taking off the crown and all of that top section because I'm going to be sectioning that and cutting that separately from the rest of the hair. So I took away the sides, I'm going to clip them away, and I'm starting at the back, at the nape of the neck. She wanted to keep her length. She didn't want me to go super, super short, and she didn't want anything that was going to be too disconnected. So I still had to connect the haircut and make it look like it was all coming together. I'm splitting those pieces in two and I'm going to start razoring. So first thing is I just kind of tilt her head forward and I'm taking my razor, this is my cashew razor, and I'm starting right in the middle. This little technique, I'm just basically grazing the hair to remove weight and create wisps on the end. So this technique not only removes weight, it also removes a little bit of length. She didn't have a whole lot of hair at the nape of her neck. Most people do. Most people have a lot of hair at the nape of the neck and not so much hair at the top. With Jane, it was a little bit of the opposite situation happening. She had not much hair on the bottom, but a ton on the top. In this next section, I'm sectioning it into 3 sections, and I decided to just twist this next section and start in the middle and start kind of grazing and razoring those pieces. So even though the mullet look is messy, there's still a process to it. There's still a lot of sectioning involved. I'm just going to be razoring. I'm using a brand new razor from Casio that they had sent me. I love these razors. They're guarded razors. So they're very safe. They're not going to cut you. They're not straight blade lasers. So you can see already that the hair is starting to look wispy. I can feel a little bit of hair on the ends. Whatever I need to take off, I just kind of go ahead and just chop it. When the razor is sharp, it cuts the hair super, super easily. You don't have to fight with the hair. And the client can always tell if the razor is clean and new or if it's old. Now moving on to the next section, I'm just moving up to the around that round of the head, and I'm going around the occipital bone. See, now you can start seeing that she has more hair up here at the occipital bone than she did at the bottom. So I'm taking thinner sections. These sections are not vertical, they're diagonal, and I'm pulling it a tiny bit forward because that would give me a good guide to start my haircut. So I'm thinking as I'm cutting is how am I going to make this look at the end? I'm starting to razor right in the middle of the hair and then slowly kind of curve into the hair. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of like doing a scooping action. In this next section, I am over directing forward because what that does is going to create a lot of density in the back. So when we direct the hair forward and cut it, it creates density in the back. So I'm gonna get that V look that I'm looking for. I want to maintain the length of her hair. I don't want it to be super short. If she'd asked me to go shorter, I would have not over directed forward. I would have probably just kept it at 90 degrees out from the head and just cut into the hair. but I really wanted to maintain the length and the density of the hair because I knew that I was going to go back and do a lot of dry cutting. It was my first time doing Jane's hair, so I wasn't sure how her hair was going to fall. I didn't know if the wave was going to sit well, so I'm always on the cautious side. I always take just a little bit at a time and go from there. So now you can see that the waves are actually coming through, and I'm loving the way that it's looking. I'm just cutting off some of the hairs that I didn't get with the razor, but I'm starting to see that the texture of her hair is actually perfect for this haircut. It's amazing how people intuitively know what haircut is going to look good on them. Jane was dying for a shag haircut, and I thought, you know what, just come in, let's do this. So here I am scooping again. I'm working on the other side. This would be her left side, and I'm taking diagonal sections and I'm over directing them forward. I'm using the fine tooth part of my comb and I'm scooping into the hair, and that is going to give me that mullet look. So it's still going to create really wispy, shaggy layers. And I was just, as I was cutting it, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be looking so good. And I'm so excited to see the finished result. So you can see that I'm super organized when I'm doing this. It's not super haphazard. I have to be careful with other people's hair because I never want to take off too much hair. So you see those little pieces. There's this one piece that I actually messed and I didn't realize it until I watched the video. So I kind of felt it and I went back and just cut into it. And now I'm scrunching the hair that I cut just to see if it's actually going to work with the texture, and I'm super, super excited. I'm just like, this is going to look so good. And it's already starting to dry, so I'm starting to see the shape. And now moving on to the next section. Now I'm sectioning off the sides of her hair so that I can come back later and create those layers in the front. I'm going from the parietal ridge, kind of top of the head to the top of the ear. And I'm going to go back a little bit behind the ear as well, just to kind of grab as much hair as possible because this is going to be the final design for this haircut. I want to bring it all together using the layers in the front. So it makes me very happy to know that it's going to be the last piece as soon as I'm done with the rest of the haircut. I'm using my Framar clips to clip the hair away. And I'm going in now to section the round of the head above the occipital bone. You can see now that she has a lot of hair here, which is super fun, but can also be quite challenging if you don't really have a plan for how you're going to tackle this. You really have to have a bit of a strategy. I'm taking hair from underneath as my guide, and I'm pulling it right straight out of the head at 90 degrees, and I'm ready to start chopping into the hair. I take her down so that she's right at eye level so I can see what I'm doing. And now I'm grazing the hair and I'm combing as I go. Razor and comb, and I'm going into the middle part of the hair. I don't need all that length, so I need all of that length to be taken off, and I want the ends to be wispy, and that is what's going to create that wave that you see right here. So it makes me super happy when I see that. It's like, it's just literally the best feeling ever. Now I'm taking my guide from the previously cut section, moving around the side of the head, and I'm moving towards the left, and I'm going and I'm doing the same thing. I did take a huge chunk of hair there, but it's okay because she has so much hair. I'm accounting for all of that hair that is on her crown to come down and create a lot of movement. So I'm not too worried about taking too much hair off, and you'll notice at the end I will take off some hair when it's dry. So see, it's starting to push into each other. The beautiful thing about razoring is that because your hair is going to be so wisped out, the short pieces are going to push into the long pieces, and I really love it for people who have kind of this exact texture of fine hair that's also dense and wavy. I find it's perfect for people with wavy hair. If someone had fine hair, I would not be doing the same techniques. I'd probably be doing something a little bit different. But where Jane has a lot of hair, I can go in and do as much cutting as I want. So I took a little bit of a guide. I took a little hair from the previous section, getting her to tilt her hair a little bit forward. And I'm going in and I'm grazing again using my razor. And I'm just kind of grazing the hair at, I guess, 90 degrees. It's not really 45 degrees. I'm not pushing into the hair. I'm just being super gentle and super cautious because you don't want to take too much hair. So I'm keeping all of those little hairs around the front so I can cut them later. and I'm taking out a ton of density with my razor and scrunching it as I go along. Now I'm checking for symmetry. I'm checking that both sides are even and they're looking a little bit good, but I think this part had a little bit more hair. So I go in and I just kind of create a few more layers because I took out so much hair on the other side. And I did notice that Jane had actually more hair on one side than the other. Now I'm scrunching it, making sure that all the layers are falling into each other because I want this to grow out really well. I want the layers and all the wisps to move into each other, to wave into each other, and just sit perfectly no matter how she is going to style her hair. Now I'm clipping away the section that I just worked on and I'm moving on to the crown section where she has even more hair. And I'm misting the hair because it was starting to dry. And it's so important to keep the same dampness throughout the entire haircut, no matter how long it takes, because if I start to cut the hair damp and then it turns dry, it's going to give me a completely different texture. And especially with razoring, the hair has to be protected. I don't like to razor the hair dry, not for a full haircut, maybe for little details, but not for a full haircut. So now I'm taking that next section at the crown and I'm over directing it forward because I'm thinking that these sections are going to blend in with the front section so she's able to wear her hair forward. Again, taking not quite vertical sections. So you can see my sections here are not 100% vertical. They're a little bit on the diagonal side. And then I'm pulling it all forward using the fine tooth part of my comb. And I'm starting in the middle of that section and just scooping the hair out. So that's taking away length and it's taking away a ton of density. And continuing around the round of the head, again, I'm pulling the hair forward and I'm using a lot of tension. So it's really important to use tension and pull on the hair and then scoop it because it just makes it easier for the razor to grab that hair. And now to blend all of the layers, I'm pulling the hair out and I'm combing from underneath at 90 degrees. I got her to tilt her head just a little bit so that I can get some more tension on the hair. And I'm cutting with the razor into the hair just to take out that density. I'm starting to see that due to her head shape, that those layers and the density of her hair, that those layers could actually end up being longer than the layers that I created underneath at the nape of the neck and at the occipital bone. So I have to be very careful and very cognizant of that once I'm done with the haircut. You guys can see how important sectioning is as I move around the round of the head. It's very important to be very aware of every section that I'm cutting because some sections, once they start blending into the next section, it's important not to cut those two sections together. So every section has to be its own, and I have to make sure that my body position is in the right place, and also Jane's head shape has to be in the right place as well. So you'll see that I moved her head around a few times because it has to sit in the same position in order to get a clean and even haircut. So after I scrunch the hair, take out the clips, I'm just kind of shaking it out. The hair started to air dry on its own and I'm starting to see the shape coming through. Again, it's important that all of those layers kind of move into each other, sit together, like really, they have to cooperate together. So I noticed this little piece that wasn't even, so I'm going in and I'm just taking off a little bit. You can see the waves kind of popping through. I have to make sure that all of the hair is even on both sides, so it's not longer on one side or shorter on the other. That's the only way that I can really guarantee that the hair is going to grow out nicely and that my client isn't going to come back and say, hey, like this side grew out a little bit differently than this side. So what I did there was I carved into the hair without taking out any length, because what that does is it kind of creates this negative space where the hair can push and really bring out its own structure and its own wave. So now I'm just taking out some of that length at the top of the head at the crown where I suspected that it might be a little bit longer than the bottom. I'm doing a cross-checking, so I'm holding the hair vertically 90 degrees from the head out, and I'm seeing that it's a little bit too long, so I'm just cutting into it and just taking that excess length. Over directing the hair does that because I over directed it maybe a little bit too far forward, so it created a ton of length in the back. But that's okay, you can always go back and fix it, especially if you know what your sections are. Now moving on to the top of the head, this is going to be so exciting for me to show you guys. I'm taking vertical sections from the top, so I'm around the apex to the crown all the way over, and I'm gonna make this one section into two sections because I take sections based on the roundness of the head. So everywhere the head rounds, I'm taking a section away. That way I can really hold that one section in between my fingers and hold it at taut at a good tension. And now I'm carving into the hair, and I'm taking these carvings and these scoopings towards the back of the head, and I'm carving starting in the middle, taking out these tiny little layers inside of the hair, and then connecting it with my next section as I move towards the front of the hair or the front of the head, and I'm pushing all of the hair back. And what that does is it really brings out a ton of waves. You can see I'm scrunching the hair. I'm starting to see how it's going to fall. Jane's hair generally grows forward, so you can see here in the back, all of these layers are going to come forward, and they are going to push into each other to give us that final beautiful look of that shag haircut. Now moving on to the next section. Again, I'm just gonna keep taking vertical sections, and I'm alternating my cutting. So instead of taking the next cut towards the back like I did with the first section, I'm actually going to cut towards the front of the hair, towards the temples. So watch this. I'm going to hold this section. I'm going to take a tiny guide from my section from before, and I'm going to use that as my guide, and I'm going to start in the middle of the section, and I'm pushing the hair forward so that it pushes itself forward, and then the other one alternates and it pushes itself back, and that way we can really create a ton of movement at the top of the head. This is so much fun to watch as it air dries, because you'll see by the end of the video how it dries. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's super fun to watch happen. It's pretty magical. So I'm just gonna put on some music right now, and you can watch as I go around the head. What I'm doing here is I'm measuring where that piece is going to fall. Because her hair falls forward, I know that that is going to be part of her layers towards the front. So I have to keep in mind how it's going to sit towards the front. And now I'm seeing that the sides are looking super cool. I'm starting to see those layers pop through, and I'm excited for the front layers around the temples. So I'm scrunching it. I like the way that it's falling. Again, it's my first time doing Jane's hair, so I don't know how her hair is going to behave. But also because I did use the frizz cream, the anti-frizz cream from Kevin Murphy, it really brings out the wave, and you can see how those waves are pushing into each other because of the technique that I used. This is a side view that we filmed with an iPad. You can see how we still have the length. We have a ton of volume at the crown. which really characterizes the shag and the mullet haircut. Now moving on to the left side of the head. Again, same thing, I'm gonna just be taking vertical sections and I'm gonna be using the guide from my previous sections as my guide. And it's important to take small sections. I find that one thing that I've learned as a hairstylist and from watching other hairstylists is taking the smaller the sections that you take, the more accurate your haircut is going to be and the cleaner it is. Every time I've taken massive sections and cut the hair, I mean, it looks good, but it may or may not look good. Like, you just don't know what you're gonna end up with. But taking small sections, very precise sections, very deliberate and intentional sections is really amazing. It makes the haircut look amazing. So you can see here now I'm pushing the hair towards the front and I'm alternating. So I'm just gonna connect that next piece and I'm going to cut those layers into the hair to create those little curves in the hair and bring out the waves. This is my favorite. This is absolutely my favorite. I just love watching this. I hope you guys are loving this as much as I am. I do want to say that I did change my razor halfway through this haircut because it was starting to dull, and it's important to have a fresh razor. Sometimes for a full haircut, you will need a full razor, like just one entire razor and then throw that out. And sometimes if the hair is really dense, I will need 2 razors, sometimes even 3 if the hair is super, super thick and long and I have to do a lot of cutting. So you can see now how all of those layers are falling into each other. And because we alternated the cuts from front to back and back to front, and I cut into the hair, you can see how it creates so much volume because all of those little tiny cuts inside the hair just push each other together. They're together, but they like push each other away at the same time. So I'm starting to see how it's gonna fall. I'm gonna push her hair forward so I can see how it's whether it's blended or not. And I'm seeing this one piece. Maybe I missed it while I was cutting. I don't know what happened there, but I'm gonna cut into it so I can blend those top layers into the side layers. And just quickly, just kind of scooping, not with as much tension as before, just a little bit of tension just so I can get the length out, and then I can always check it when it's dry. A lot of times when I'm watching like this magic happen, I don't want to do any dry cutting because once the hair is styled, Going in dry can really ruin the haircut. I like sectioning and I like cutting really precise haircuts for the shag because it's so messy, it needs to be precise, if that makes any sense. Now I'm moving on to my favorite parts, which are the front layers around the face. These are going to make or break the haircut, and I know that, and that's why I'm taking such thin, fine sections. I've moved right in front of Jane, and I'm scooping right where I want the hair to fall. I'm imagining these layers falling right at her cheekbone and kind of contouring her face. I think contour is the best word to use it. Jane Matthews calls them little petals around the face. I don't know if I would call them little flower petals, but they are going to be very curved layers. These aren't your traditional layers that are just gonna fall flat. These are meant to move, they're meant to curve, they're meant to bring out waves, and they're meant to dry naturally, beautifully with minimal product. I'm taking very, very thin sections using my fine tooth comb, and I'm curving into the hair. Again, you can notice how I'm moving my wrists so that the hair falls really curvy. That's the whole point. We want a lot of curves in this haircut. And I'm using a lot of tension here, which is why I got her to move her head, because I want to pull on the hair. I don't want it to be flimsy. If I don't pull with tension on the hair, then I'm not going to get a clean haircut with my razor. It could end up kind of fracturing the hair, and I don't want that. I want it to be very clean. So I'm going in and I'm taking out a little bit more length because I wasn't too happy with the length from before. I just felt like it felt a little bit flat or fell flat, and I just want to go in and just create a few more curves and take out some of that weight as well as I'm doing that. I'm starting to feel a bit more confident. I'm seeing how her hair is falling, and I'm sure that this is going to look amazing. I just have a good feeling about it. Seeing how this is falling. Look at that. Look at that. You can see the waves coming through, and I know that it's all going to blend with the rest of the hair. So this is another negative space trick. I cut into the hair in order for it to push itself into a wave. Now I'm going on to the next side, or this is going to be her right side. I'm taking a guide from the previous section, and I'm just curving again or carving into the hair. So you notice again, my wrist is curving into the hair. I'm not taking just clean straight sections. These are these are sections that are supposed to, this is hair that's supposed to move. So you notice here, I don't know if you guys can see, but she actually has less hair on this side than she did on her left side. So her right side has less hair. And I noticed this as I finished the haircut, that she doesn't have as much density on her right side, which is actually quite normal. A lot of people have that. And I have to be cognizant of that. I have to keep that in mind, because I can go back into her left side and take out weight till the cows come home, but I can't do that on the right side. I have to maintain every single hair that she has on the right side because, I mean, it's important. I don't want to cut too much into the hair. So you can see here, I am shaking out the hair. Let's see if it all blends together. I'm noticing that some of the hairs are still a little bit long. So what I'm going to do here, in order to blend everything in with her bangs that she actually cut herself, which I find quite amazing, is I'm taking horizontal sections. I'm standing right in front of her, and I'm creating kind of like a curtain bang. If you guys want to see a curtain bang tutorial, you can watch my other videos, but this is more of a razored, free-flowing kind of curtain bang layers so that her hair can sit forward. I'm blending the layers. Again, she has so much hair that I'm not really worried about cutting too much hair. But these pieces are going to frame the haircut. These are the polishing pieces. This is the end of the haircut. I want to make sure that it's all going to sit together. I'm holding my razor at an angle, and I'm cutting into the hair and creating these kind of like layers that are just going to curve around the bangs. It's going to curve around her temples. It's going to curve around her eyebrows and her eyes and her cheekbones. And I'm keeping all of that in mind because that is really the signature shag. So you can see, we can see like how the curtain bangs are starting to sit. Even though she doesn't have curtain bangs, I'm creating a curtain bang shape at the top of her head so that I can really push the hair forward once it's done and give it that beautiful mullet look. As I was rewatching this video, I was wondering whether if I could have just done the whole haircut doing this technique, just pulling all the hair forward and cutting into it. But I don't think that would have been possible. I think sectioning the hair piece by piece would have been the best way to do this. This is just blending everything together. Cutting the top of the head in alternating directions and alternating layers is literally just the base and the foundation for this haircut. If I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have been able to really create the shape that I wanted. So now I'm moving in from the apex, and I'm cutting into the hair. So now you can see I'm taking out a lot of length, because I'm seeing that as soon as I have it sit forward, if I had left it as I did before, then it would have just sat super long and heavy. I'm moving all of those pieces forward, holding it at attention, and I am blending. I'm cutting into the hair and blending the layers, creating layers as I go. I don't know how else to describe this. If you guys have better ways to describe this technique, please leave it in the comments below. I'm cutting into the hair now because, again, blending. This is just a lot of blending. Whenever I do someone's hair for the first time, as I see it start to dry, I start to see the shape, I start to feel a bit more confident about what I'm doing. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the beginning of the video, I wasn't 100% sure as to how things were going to sit. Now I'm starting to feel more confident because I can actually see how the hair is going to sit. And this is how I treat every single client. I ask them a lot of questions about their lifestyle and what they do and how they wear their hair, and if they want to wear it forward or backward, or do they hold it up in a ponytail. That's really important. Now with Jane, she's wanted a shag, so this is like a real shag. So I'm cutting into the hair now to create more dimension into the hair and take out any unnecessary length. Again, just moving around the head shape as I see the hair dry and start to take shape into this beautiful shag. Okay, so this is the final reveal. Look at this. So her hair is still wet, it's still a little damp, and you can see how happy I am. I'm so excited that this is all coming together and all of the layers are blending together. It's looking so good. Now I'm just refining. I'm just watching if there's any hairs that are sticking out that are not really flowing with the rest of the hair. She's got a bit longer pieces on this side than on the other, which is normal, especially with wavy hair, and especially when you're razoring the hair, every piece is going to act a little bit slightly differently, which is kind of what we want. That is the look that we're going for. I am so in love with the shape of this. I love the volume that she has on top. It really is a perfect shape that I wanted to create. So now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to clean up her bangs. So she cut her own bangs herself, which is actually quite impressive. I thought she did a great job. She was okay with me going a bit shorter, but I thought, you know what, well, let's just keep it. And she had a bit of a cowlick there, if you guys can see. And I'm just going to cut into the hair. I wanted to keep it and just cut wispiness into the hair. So I'm combing the hair from underneath and I'm just cutting into it just to give it was just a bit too clean and too heavy and too blunt. I wanted to create more wispiness. I wanted to create more texture so that it blends in with the rest of the hair. Because her bangs were so thick, I actually had to section them off into 2 pieces using my Framar clips, and I'm slide cutting. I didn't want to use my razor because I felt like the razor can be, I can take off like big chunks of hair with the razor, but when I want something super, super detailed, like the bangs, I'd much rather use my scissors. Again, I'm using Casio scissors. They sent these to me, so big shout out to Casio. They are my favorite shears. They are 6-inch, and I'm just using my razor here to blend the top layers into the bangs because I already used the razor, so I know that that's the effect that I want. But for the bangs themselves, I was using my shears. Now I'm pinching the top because this is kind of what I would normally do if I'm doing a curtain bang. I'm seeing that this piece is a little bit longer, so I'm just slide cutting or slide razoring into it to blend everything together. Again, pulling the hair a little bit forward and cutting into it again and seeing how that, I cut and I scrunch as I go, especially during the finishing touches. A little bit of polishing here. Her hair is so thick, so I have to go in and cut wispiness into the hair. I'm watching the hair dry now, and I am using Hot Mess from Amika. This is one of my favorite gels. If you notice in my other videos, I've actually used it when I used to have a pixie. I find it's such a great gel and a great product to bring out waves, take away frizz, and just to settle the hair into its natural shape. I've never used anything like it. It doesn't leave the hair scrunchy or crunchy. It doesn't give that residue feel, but it's really great. I think I might have used a bit too much, so I'm just trying to like comb it through the hair and scrunch it and watch the haircut come together. For this type of haircut, especially for wavy hair or fine hair that tends to be frizzy, you absolutely need a little bit of product. The product that you use should be lightweight and should be anti-frizz and should also bring out your curls. I'm using Osis Curl Honey just to bring out the waves on the bottom part, so around her nape and underneath the occipital bone. It's not really waving the way I want it to because she doesn't have a lot of hair there. She has a lot more hair on the top, so it tends to wave more. But in the back of the head, she doesn't have a lot of wave, so I'm just using the Curl Honey from Osis, which is a curl cream, to allow for the curls to really pop. Now I'm diffusing the hair. I'm holding the hair in the direction that I want it to sit, and you can see I'm just sculpting the hair the way that it wants to sit. Keeping in mind the whole time that I actually kind of created this, remember, with the razor cutting, that whole negative space thing. I'm pulling at the roots here with my fingers. I'm pinching and pushing into the roots, and I have my hairdryer on low heat and low setting, so both very, very low, just so that the cuticle isn't going to frizz up. If you use a really high heat and high setting, you could end up with a lot of frizz. So you got to be a little bit gentle. Her hair dries fast anyway, so I'm seeing the texture come through. I like how the bangs are sitting too. They're very textured, they're very wispy, and the back is looking great as well. I really think that Curl Honey and the Amika Hot Mess Gel really meshed well together. coming around the front, I have to make sure that these little petals or these little layers are even on both sides, because again, remember, we want this to contour the face, contour the cheekbones, contour just the face structure. These are the frames of the face. It's kind of like, you know, when you go to do your eyebrows, like the front layers are super amazing. They're both even. I'm checking for evenness. They're both even. There's a little bit more on the side than the other, which is normal. I'm using my shears and slide cutting into it instead of my razor, because now that the hair is dry, I prefer to use my shears because I can see where the hair is sitting, whereas with the razor, I feel like I might end up taking a little bit too much hair. And I'm slide cutting with the direction of the wave. I'm not going against it. Just kind of let the hair sit the way that it wants to sit. I'm combing out the gel because I noticed I put a little bit too much on the top. So I'm just combing it out and I'm fluffing up the hair. Notice that I'm just styling it now at this point, but notice that there's not a whole lot of frizz. And this is the result that you want. You want hair that is frizz-free and where the shape is really popping. I am so in love with this shape. I'm massaging the roots, and the gel is amazing for fine hair and hair that, if you don't like hair or products that can be too heavy for you, the gel is perfect. The gel is so good. So you just massage it once the hair is dry, and it really just fluffs up the hair. It just gives volume to the hair is what I'm really trying to say. Again, just used my shears there just to cut off a little piece that wasn't curving. Now I'm using this beautiful anti-static spray from R&Co. It has a tiny bit of shine as a finishing touch because I feel like I just wanted a little bit more shine. This product is amazing for fine hair. R&Co in general is amazing for fine hair. And this is the finished result, you guys. I am in love with this. Please let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this tutorial, if you like it, if you're a professional stylist, or if you're trying to cut your own hair at home, which I don't recommend, but I don't judge. I don't judge at all. I look forward to connecting with you on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.